y'all. It's gonna take some getting used to seeing myself on camera. But today, I wanted to talk about what is money. We have an understanding of what money is for the most part. I hope a lot of people do. But how many of us actually know where it came from? I didn't before I looked this up. And I thought it would be interesting to make a video about this because hopefully by the end of this video, you've obtained something from it, but also at the end, I'm going to kind of bring everything that I talk about together to kind of come into full fruition so that you can really get a takeaway of why this information should be relevant to you. You know, the funny thing about history is that a lot of times you hear all about this historical context, which this is going to have some history, some facts, some statistics, you know. But yeah, you hear history and you're like, okay, that's cool, but like, it was history. People lived it, people died from it, people moved on. Like, it's not relevant anymore. So I want to emphasize the relevance at the end of this video. But so to start, what is money?
Money is a commodity accepted by general consent as a common medium of exchange.
Similar to other forms of currency, money only has value because people assign it value. Essentially, money is a socially accepted standard unit of currency with which goods and services are priced. So next, how does the money cycle work? So from you, let's say you work a job or you work whatever your source of income is, you receive that source of income, you spend it somewhere. It goes somewhere after that, of course. So how does it cycle back around to reach back into your hands? So for the most part, money is an exchange between lenders and borrowers. The lenders could be banks, it could be businesses, and the borrowers are usually people and businesses, and in some instances, banks. Fun fact, if you ever go to the bank and you try to withdraw a certain, like, there's a daily limit with a lot of bank accounts where like you can't take out more than a certain amount. So let's say that amount is, you know, $2,500 a day. That's your limit. That's kind of low, but like this is a rough estimate. The reason why that is, one, of course, is for security reasons. It flags the system like, oh, this person's trying to take out a large sum of money. We should watch this transaction. We should get additional proof and authorization to make sure that this transaction is valid. But in addition, banks don't actually hold all of your money. So you could have $2,000 in your bank account. The bank doesn't actually have that amount in the bank, if that makes sense. Or like sometimes they do, but it's one of those things where as though banks also invest in different things. So they take a portion of the money that you may have in your savings or something like that, probably not checking. And I'll do another video if anyone's interested about, you know, knowing how the banking system works. But if I stand corrected, and if anyone wants to correct me in the comments, please do, because it's been a long time since I've learned this. But I'm pretty sure that banks use like savings money and anything that's like long-term money that's held by people like you and me. They use it to invest in other things and generate a profit after that. Because you wonder, like, how do banks remain profitable when all they're doing is really just holding your money? Like, unless you take out a loan and they can charge interest or something like that, or like a upfront deposit or anything of that sort, how are they making money? And I think that's one of the ways that they use that money to invest in other things. And that's why bank runs and stuff like that are so detrimental, because you would wonder, like, oh, I put my money in the bank, so why isn't the money still there? The reason why is because it's tied up into other things. And if the gamble or investment that the bank went through doesn't particularly pan out, I mean, of course, you're entitled to that money back because they lost your money. But I believe that, like, in signing some form of authorization for opening an account, it may be in like the fine print. Like I said, I'm not an expert. I don't actually remember. But that's the main cycle that money takes. Is it starts off with banks. They loan it out to businesses. They loan it out to people. The people buy things and merchandise with the money that was loaned out to them. The money then goes to businesses, or it goes back to the bank. So this next part is going to be a bit long, but it's how exactly money became the threads of society, the way that we know it to be today. How did that happen? Like, more specifically, how did money become a determining factor of society? Like, why does money matter so much? So to start, In the earliest forms of the world, there has always been a transfer of currency and goods. In the beginning, in the earliest of America, there used to be the mother of pearl shells that used to be traded for food, shelter, whatever was needed at the time. And in some parts of Africa, cowrie shells were used as a means of exchange. And from there, it grew from copper to copper is a natural mineral, but different natural minerals like gold, sheeps, straw, wood, anything that could hold value to one person and can be exchanged with equal or greater value to the next. Now here's a story of how the financial metrics came to be the backbone of society. So in 1791, the Secretary of Treasury at the time, Alexander Hamilton, wrote a letter to Americans across the country, basically asking them how much are they worth? How much economic capacity can you withstand between your farms, your family, workshops, anything that you own? How much money can you generate in any given time? And he was using this report to establish economic indicators for the report on manufacturers. Of course, Alexander Hamilton was sadly disappointed when he got all the responses back and they were all useless. Now, it wasn't all their fault. It wasn't the Americans' fault, because at the time, there was this concept called moral statistics. And moral statistics basically means through a moral standpoint, how valuable are you, or how, I don't want to say unvaluable, but what does what you do and what you stand for, how does that determine your wealth within society? So things such as being a prostitute, being a criminal, being illiterate, being insane, those things decreased your societal value to something. Think about this like a triangle. On one end, 3 points. On one point, it's the physical. On the second point, it's the societal. And on the third point, it's the mental. So those three concepts encompass together with the human in the middle. And I'll have a diagram up so you know. But so those three things accumulated together determined social wealth. It never really placed a distinct value on the people or the progress outside of just public perception. How are you perceived? Are you, like, if you are a prostitute or you are a criminal or anything like that, it's about the human perception, is not about a numerical value. So you may be wondering, how did this shift actually occur from this very obscure and abstract concept of social wealth to this more numerical and calculated version of it? And part of it was slavery, because people had a price on their head. People were exchanged for a certain value. Also, and a funny fact, which isn't really that funny, but I thought I'd share, is that there was a point in time where the South, the North and the South, were arguing based on who was right about their stance on slavery. The North predominantly believed that slavery was wrong, and people and African Americans were free, or generally free, in the North. And in the South, people were still slaves, and there was still this stigma about Black people. So in that time, the South used economic metrics and economic calculations in order to argue for the fact that slavery was actually something that that was good for Black people, that was good for the economy as a whole, that if there wasn't this installment of slavery, we would be in financial and economic ruin, and political. So the next thing that attributed to this shift is the emergence of capitalism. More specifically, the capitalism of investments, meaning that natural resources such as gas, minerals, other things such as education, art, and even people had a price tag, had a value to them, because the goal was to have investments that generated a ROI over time, which is a return on investment. And from this, it just escalated from there, from, now to a point where your skills and your abilities can be marketable, and you can generate an income just for being who you are, just for educating yourself, just for being talented, or having a bubbly or charismatic personality. People will pay for that. And it wasn't like that at first. So, so that kind of sums up the historical portion of this video. Now we can talk about what you can learn. What are the key takeaways from this? So number one, think back to the cycle I talked about earlier between lenders and borrowers. If you truly think about it, you can end up on any end of that spectrum, on any end of that transaction. You can become a lender, which means that you have a sum of money that you have set aside that you can invest in something in order to acquire a return on your investment. Now, whether it is you want to invest in real estate, which I talked about in my last video, how you can pool your money together with other investors and own a portion of a real estate property. The importance is having your money work for you, whether it is you also, or if you want it to be on the business side, which you could still potentially be a borrower and a loaner in that instance. You can become an entrepreneur, own your own business, sell products that are profitable, that, your initial investment is lower than the potential profit that you will acquire afterwards. And that way you're obtaining a capital gain. And two is that this shift means that you have value. Like I said earlier today, or like I said earlier in this video, you could be a crappy person. Like, hopefully you aren't, but if you are a crappy person, you could just have a talent or have something that people like about you, or something that is marketable, whether that's a skill, whether that's an experience that you had that you can share with other people, and hopefully acquire a fan base or people who are just loyal followers of you and who are willing to pay or offer their attention or whatever. And like in this day of YouTube, so many people do so many different things, which is so beautiful to me, that like you could sit in front of your camera and just watch paint dry. And if enough people like you watching paint dry, and maybe you narrate the paint drying and how quickly it is and how you're feeling in that instance, and it's good enough for people to actually gravitate towards it, you can generate income from that. And so I think it's this mass diversification of what's valuable. At the time, in the early 1900s, what you did was the biggest determining factor. Like, if you were a criminal, it doesn't matter what context in which you were a criminal. It doesn't matter why you became a criminal. None of that matters. It doesn't matter that you suddenly became wealthy. None of that matters, because at the core, you were a criminal. But now, you could be a criminal, but you could have a lot of money. You could buy yourself out. I don't advocate for that, of course, but it's just fascinating how quickly that shift changed, like within the last 200 years, which is a long time, but also isn't. It's like 2 generations. People have literally changed the definition of what's valuable and what's money, and what social currency we use. It's a lot of peace in the fact that as long as I continue to refine my skills and gain additional skills and just gain new experiences, that I can be marketable, that I don't have to come up with this grand invention. I don't have to discover or invent anything. I can just be myself and offer that to the general marketplace, and hopefully there's a price on that, and you can obtain a sustainable income from that. It allows for a lot more autonomy over your outcome in life, and it allows you to take from a larger pot than what was previously a much smaller pot.
Hey, thank you for watching. It really does mean a lot, sincerely. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Ruby signing off.